Welcome to the Battle of Fredericksburg. And I think this is a pretty easy battle. I get 3.3 to 1 and manage to take out over 20,000 of the enemy. And it's not that difficult a battle. You'll notice how I deploy my army. I put all my troops, and I now have over 100,000 troops. I have 4 corps, but one of them is just like a placeholder. There's not much there. It's basically a full supply wagon that I'm not going to need because I mean 4 supply wagons is overkill, and I'm going to capture 3 or 4 more. But the big thing is don't attack Marie's Heights. Now I grew up surrounded by military people, and Burnside was considered one of the worst commanders of all world history, of all military history. And I also knew some historians, and they also considered him one of the worst commanders of all time. And this battle is an example. It's not the only case of his incompetence and his absolutely disastrous leadership, but you don't want to be compared to Burnside. And so when I came into this battle the very first time, and I've played this battle many times, there's no way I was going to attack Marie's Heights. It's just out of the question because I didn't want to have anything in common with the worst general in history, or one of the worst generals. Although Braxton Bragg gives Burnside a run for his money. And the so I went into it the first time accepting, okay, I'm going to get a draw because I'm not going to attack the Heights. It's out of the question. And so what you saw is I deployed my army, didn't attack. I'm just not attacking on that side because I'm not General Burnside. And I don't want to be compared to him. So this is what I do when I play Fredericksburg. And it turns out you don't have to take Marie's Heights. There's no reason to attack on that side of the battlefield at all. There's no payoff for it. It's just a great way to get a bunch of your men killed for no purpose. Move everybody to the other side and take the other 2 objectives, you get a victory. And as soon as you take the 2 objectives, there's a countdown clock, and the countdown clock is why I don't get 4 to 1. As you'll see, I have a group of the enemy surrounded at the end, and the only reason the last couple thousand don't get wiped out, even though they're completely surrounded by a huge mob of Union troops, is that the countdown clock saves them. So what is the strategy? Well, First Corps is going to do this von Schlieffen plan movement around the enemy right flank and come in behind the enemy objective. And once again, I'm just popping all the units out, and I'm going to put them down in some kind of an order, so you get to see that again. Everything's at double speed at this point. And what I want is I want my divisions together. This is going to be a pretty big army, and it really helps if your divisions are together. So anyway, we're going to do this long sweeping movement. Now it turns out that there's a lot of cav in the woods on the right side of the map, and we're going to focus on just taking those guys out. And I have had it where you catch the entire Confederate cav force in the woods and annihilate them before the battle proceeds. Sometimes you don't, so that's just how that goes. So you can see how I just plop all the units down and then kind of stack them up. And this is a really organized way to advance with your army. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. See, I think that's just organized. Now, Second Corps is going to take the center objective. So First Corps is going to take the one on the Confederate right, and Second Corps is going to take the center objective. Third Corps is going to come in, and Third Corps is kind of my corps that needs experience, and this is where a lot of my casualties will come from. But I need these guys to get experience. I have 100,000 men, and I want to get to 150,000. So I need Third Corps to get experience because I'm already planning on the next 50,000 getting experience. So when you build a big army, you want these guys to get experience, and the other thing is you need officers to get experience so you can build a really big officer corps with lots of 3-star, 2-star, and 1-star generals and colonels. You don't want units commanded by majors, so you need commanders, and a lot of them. So high-ranking officers all throughout the chain of command. Every division commander a 3-star. And the only way that happens is units get in there and fight. And so 3rd Corps, their job is just to go find somebody to attack and get experience. So that's what you're going to see. So there are two things I think that are important to know about how the game works. And as usual, there are scripted events. So you'll be on one side of the map and then on the other side of the map, and it'll switch back and forth. There's a part where the map kind of cuts itself off, which it does in the map is cut off, so you can have units that are cut off in the change. So you end up with instead of your entire corps facing a bunch of enemy units, you end up with like 3 units facing an entire enemy corps because the rest of them are cut off when the map did its shift thing. So that's important to know, and I almost reloaded when that happened to me, but I went ahead and accepted it. Another part that happens in Fredericksburg is that units will spam right on top of you if you have units in the center of the board when it does one of those shift things. And so I have units spam on top of me at the end of this phase that we're in right now. It goes to kind of like the center battlefield phase. Anyway, you'll see it. There'll be a scripted shift, and what'll happen is that a bunch of units will spam right into the middle of my army. And I go ahead and accept it rather than reload because, well, quite frankly, I didn't do any saves. I was just playing. And but I went ahead and accepted it because it was kind of exciting. Most of my battles are pretty, well, my units advance and there's a solid line and there's really not much excitement. I just pound the enemy to death and then the battle's over. But this was kind of exciting. I had to kind of react to enemy units just spamming in the middle of my army and how I was going to react to it. And it was kind of exciting. I took some losses, but yeah, it was kind of fun because it was the unexpected. So that was neat. And in its own way, it was stupid and it was silly and it was, you know, part of the mess that is Ultimate General Civil War of having these scripted events when, you know, it wouldn't happen historically, but okay. So I went ahead and kept it in the game and I accepted the losses that I took, which wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been a scripted event. One of the things that's going to happen to you probably in Fredericksburg, and it's happened to me in every game I've played of Fredericksburg, is I think one or maybe more of the cav units will just toggle God mode. And what will happen is I'm not talking about a unit being able to move through your lines, but a cav unit or two will just roll right over top of your infantry. And I don't mean your infantry line, I mean right over top of a unit. And you can't shoot at it, you can't melee with it, you can't do anything. It just rolls over top of you. I mean, this is still an unfinished game. The devs seem to think that their game is finished and they're now ready to roll on and do another game. This game is not finished by any stretch of the imagination. There's still lots of bugs and lots of things that need to be fixed. And one of the things is these ghost units that they turn ghost, they roll over top of your units without doing any damage and without you doing any damage to them. But then they get to the rear of your army and they're active again. And they're back in play, and it's just nonsense. So I go ahead and accept it. Sometimes I save the game frequently so I can reload when that happens, but I don't think there's any way around it. I think that in Fredericksburg, it's not just a bug, but it's almost, well, it's happened every time. So it's just something you have to deal with in Fredericksburg, that they can turn on God mode and go anywhere they want, and you can't do anything to them. You can't inflict any damage on them. And, you know, it's just another broken thing in Ultimate General. So anyway, I just deal with it and move on, and you know, and you're still dealing with the usual thing that units don't know how to attack or retreat in the right direction, so you have to deal with that too. And but overall, it's a pretty easy battle, and it's here I've detached skirmishers and cav. And the entire point of this is to push the cav, the enemy cav, into like a corner. And I want to take over the woods on the right side of the map and then take over the entire center. And then take, I mean, it's like a big, like I said, a big von Schlieffen plan maneuver. The entire first corps is going to come in behind the enemy. Second corps is going to come into the middle of the map and then turn right from its perspective and take the center objective. And third corps is going to come in and just attack the enemy on the Confederate right flank just to get experience. Now, even so, I'm never ever. Notice how there's a big swampy, marshy area and lots of river that you can attack over. I would never attack in there. The computer game always gives you a place where you can move really slow and have no cover to advance, and you can advance against entrenched enemies just to give you the opportunity to throw your army away. And I'm going to decline to take that opportunity, as I always do. I'm not going to attack across the marshy land into enemy units in woods with lots of fortifications and artillery support, because you can throw your army away. You can come out of Fredericksburg with 1-to-1 or less than 1-to-1 losses pretty easily, and the game gives you every opportunity to do that. So here you can see my reinforcements coming in, and they're just going to advance into the center and pause, and First Corps continues its advance. And we want to clean out all this cav, and if we can't kill it all, at least we want to push it out of this section of the map so that the entire, well, what you'll see is the entire enemy force on the Confederate right ends up in a pocket. They end up being completely surrounded and in a pocket. And my troops end up taking over the entrenched positions along the wood line facing out. And the enemy actually ends up at the very end of the game in a pocket out in the swamp. They end up in the positions where there's no cover and where they can't move, and they're completely exhausted, and all of my artillery is just pounding into them. Keep advancing, keep pushing the enemy away. The dismounted or the detached skirmishers and the dismounted cav do a great job of just kind of pushing the enemy cav back, and it takes away that thing where the enemy cav like rushes up and takes a shot and inflicts damage on you and then retreats without taking any casualties. These guys do a really good job of, first of all, when the enemy fires, you don't take that many casualties because they're dismounted, because they're detached skirmishers. But secondly, they will fire into the cav and do damage to them. So you're chipping away at them instead of them chipping away at you. And that's always good. While the infantry, your infantry, is able to get into position without having to fight or get exhausted. And that's always to the good. So anyway, this is the first part of the battle as it unfolds. And then what you'll see is at the end of this, you'll see another corps comes in, and it comes in on the Fredericksburg side of the map again, and I don't do anything with it. The troops that are scripted to show up inside Fredericksburg cross back over to the river, away from the Confederate Army. I want nothing to do with Fredericksburg or that side of the map. And then everybody shifts over to the center of the map and joins the battle that's going on. And the entire battle is about taking the objective that you see now and the objective to the left, that's the center objective, and completely ignoring Marie's Heights. And if you do that, I think you'll have a pretty easy battle. This army that is advancing is intended to, and I've successfully brought these guys up before, and they didn't do any fighting until the center of the map opened up, and then you just advance them to the bottom of the map, and then they turn a hard right and go straight for the objective. There are no fortifications there. There's very little infantry, and it's a walk in the park. Basically, I have 100,000 men here. The enemy has about 45,000, I think. So about 15,000 on each of the three flags. So basically, when I'm attacking with a corps, I don't know, I have about maybe 25 or 30,000 or more. Attacking maybe 15,000. And it's even worse than that, because when I'm attacking the flag, I have my entire corps concentrated on that one point, while his corps is spread out over an enormous area. So overwhelming force at the decisive point of the battlefield, the basic principles of mass and concentration and shock and economy of force and all the basic principles of war. And that's what we'll do. We'll hit the enemy at the crucial part of the battle with overwhelming power and take the flag. And that'll happen in both the Confederate right and the Confederate center. So yeah, it's usual that Second Corps will just sit here quietly and wait, and doesn't take part in the battle until, the part of the map that you don't see that's blackened out opens up. And then we just walk over there and make sure that we enter the battlefield where there are no enemy fortifications. And once we get into the wood line, then it's really easy. I don't think there are even very many infantry units there. I mean, I'm going to go in with an entire corps, and he only has a couple of units defending that section of the line. Most of his units are forward defending fortifications that I'm never going to attack. So, yeah, and same thing here. Most of his units are defending his fortifications that I am intentionally going to make sure that I never attack. So, yeah, and I'm not even that interested in, like right now, going for the flag. I want to come around and get my entire army to come completely around that flag in the wood line and link up with what will be Third Corps and completely surround this Confederate force. So the flag will fall after, well, it'll just fall. I mean, it'll, in the course of surrounding the entire Confederate corps and destroying it, the flag will just fall. And I don't have to be in a rush. I have tons of time. You have until very late at night. Now, one of the things for me is I think my computer monitor is actually darker than most people's. So this game plays until very late, but at some point I can no longer see the units on my computer screen. So I tend to just end the battle when it gets so dark that I can't see the units. So that's also one of the reasons why I end the battle a little bit early. And and the other thing is I think the last flag that I take is pretty much undefended, and I just walk over and take it without thinking. And then the second I took it, the countdown clock started, and I went, oh yeah, once again, countdown clock. So I probably would have squeezed out another 30 minutes of gameplay, probably, and gotten closer to 4-1 casualties. But at the end of the battle, everybody gets lots of experience, and that sets us up for having, now working on getting 3 full corps with every unit has 1 star, and start thinking about developing that 4th corps and getting every unit there also a star. And we're right on track to being so OP that Gettysburg, for example, is going to be a joke. I mean, at this point, I don't have to do anything, and Gettysburg would pretty much be a complete joke. So, but I'm going to keep building the army and make Gettysburg even a bigger joke. So, and a more ridiculous battle. So anyway, this will take you halfway through Fredericksburg, and then I'll see you in part 2. The part 2 of Fredericksburg, the second and final part, and we'll wrap up Fredericksburg. So enjoy the rest of the battle, or the rest of this video, and I'll see you in part 2.